Governments and corporations work very hard to produce electricity, but what if they could do exactly that by just digging a hole in the ground? Now, everyone in our modern society has to use electricity in some way. You do, I do, it's a fact of life. And I want to talk about using the earth itself as a power source for that electricity today. I'm going to begin by briefly explaining how electricity is made. And usually electricity is made by spinning a turbine in some fashion. This is usually accomplished by burning a fuel to heat water and spin the turbine. This is usually done by burning fossil fuels such as coal or natural gas, but it can also be done by burning other fuels such as nuclear fuel with uranium or renewable fuels like biodiesel, peat, or ethanol. Power can also be produced with solar, which does not usually use a turbine anyway, but it can. And we also have turbines being spun by the environment in some way. This is things such as wind power, hydropower, or geothermal power. And I want to dig more into how geothermal power itself works, beginning with a quote from Vincent Gonzalez. Despite these multiple use options, however, geothermal represented only 0.5% of the net electricity generation in the U.S. as of April 2020 and has not seen substantial growth in the U.S. over the past few years. More growth is happening in other parts of the world, but given that the U.S. is still the largest net generator of electricity from geothermal, these gains continue to be fairly small. One of the main reasons for this is that geothermal requires specific things in order to work, namely a reservoir of hot water. This can be bypassed in some ways by using enhanced geothermal systems, but that's its own topic. Now, there are several types of geothermal power. Beginning, we have dry steam systems, which use water that's already in the form of steam coming from the ground. This is things like geysers that shoot steam from the ground. Think Old Faithful and Yellowstone. Now, this is the oldest type of geothermal power and is also the least efficient. And after that, we have flash steam systems, which bring hot water from the ground but is under pressure, and it's put into a low pressure environment where it instantly vaporizes into steam to spin a turbine. This is the current most common type of geothermal power and is more efficient than dry steam. And finally, we have binary cycle systems, which bring hot water from the ground still, but instead of using it to spin the turbines directly, it never leaves its pipe it's in, and instead boils a low boiling point fluid such as ammonia or other organic compounds to spin the turbine. This is currently the newest form of geothermal power. Now that we know more about geothermal power, let's look more into how it affects us in our lives. Like other forms of renewable energy sources, geothermal is good, but it can be considered better than other types in some ways. For one, geothermal takes up less space per gigawatt hour of production than other types. For example, 1 gigawatt hour of geothermal power takes up less than half the amount of space for 1 gigawatt hour of wind energy. It also produces less harm to the environment in many ways. For example, because it takes up less space, it causes less direct harm to the environment by the environment needing to be destroyed to be able to build the plants that produce electricity. Geothermal also produces no pollution whatsoever in the form of binary cycle systems, which are becoming more common. Geothermal also is a base load power source, so it produces less damage to the environment because it requires less batteries to function because it doesn't need that supplemental power storage. Because it doesn't need batteries, it requires less mining, which has large connections to human rights violations and massive amounts of environmental damage. Geothermal can also be used for things other than power production, such as directly heating homes and businesses with hot water. Hot water from geothermal can also be used in industrial applications like milk pasteurization, or simply as for bathing in the form of hot springs or things like that. Geothermal also produces permanent jobs like other renewable energy sources. And now that I've talked about geothermal power, I hope that you're interested in it and look more into it, and I hope that interest in geothermal power leads in a general interest in renewable energy sources and learning how they affect us in our everyday lives and the world around us.